We're going to get underway. Good morning. Great to see you all. Thanks for joining us this morning for this very timely fireside chat between Bill Tai and Cliff Obrecht. Thank you both for joining us this morning. It's great to see you, and in particular, Cliff. It's been a big week for you, I'm sure, so thanks for taking the time to talk to the group this morning. So like everybody with West Tech Fest, we've been trying different things, and this is the first of a webinar that we're experimenting with in the lead up to West Tech Fest this year. We're definitely going ahead with West Tech Fest despite the challenges of events this year. We're in the process of planning. So Paula, Taylor, Larry Lopez and I have been chatting about different options. We're just chatting to Bill about virtual attendance of an event in December. We'll try and do certainly as much in person as possible. The main event and Roto Tech Fest are going ahead, and we're looking at other events during the course of the week. If you've got ideas for events, then contact Paula or myself or Larry. Certainly we're looking for partnerships across that event as well, as always, so please get in touch about that. The dates are the 30th of November to the 4th of December. Thanks, Paula, for setting up the webinar this morning, and thanks, Cliff, for timing your announcement about the recent fundraising as promotion for the webinar. That's certainly attracted a lot of interest, and we've had a lot of people sign up for this morning. So I'm going to introduce both Bill and Cliff now. They don't really need any introduction. Bill, you've had another stellar year. Certainly some companies have adapted much better to the health crisis than others, and Zoom being one of those. I know you're also involved this year with XTC, and they've had a lot of interest in that competition, and it's going through the process of finals now. Cliff, I think everyone knows the Canva story, particularly in Perth. I tend to see you guys now everywhere, and I was noticing this morning that I even have one of these floating around my desk. You must, and this must be one of the things that you aspired to when you were thinking about formation of Canva, the front page of company director. You've really made it now. But look, no one really, I don't think we really need a further introduction than for me to hand over to both Bill and Cliff to chat about the story of Canva. So Bill, over to you.
Just before Bill goes, I just want to say thank you, Rowan, for running such a great organization and event, because it was at one of these events that like very much like this in Perth that we met Bill Tai, and without it, we wouldn't have had that window into sort of Silicon Valley and sort of had doors open to us to raise money and actually build Canva. So I'd encourage everyone here to sort of like come along to all the events that you run, and it's these serendipitous meetings that you have that can lead to sort of great things. And certainly we wouldn't have been where we are without sort of some meeting Bill Tai at one of your events. So thank you.
Yes, well, thanks, Cliff. And I'm glad we're recording this. It's also, I like to call it the Larry Lopez lounge room effect, because I do remember you guys coming over to our event at Larry's house and huddling in the lounge room with Bill and others and telling the Canva story in its very early days. So it's great to see where it's gone from there.
I remember that.
And I have to say also, it's wonderful that this group that throws this function loves kite surfing. Now I got to throw that in there because, you know, Cliff and I have been on so many trips in and around, you know, Western Australia, Sydney and other places, but Hawaii, all kinds of places. Really, you know, kind of that started at that first West Tech Fest. So you got to mix fun, you know, work and play are one and the same when you're really into it. And this is one of those moments.
I'll just do just one more comment I'd make just for the format. Bill and Cliff are going to have a chat for 20 odd minutes, but you can, if you please do lodge questions in the Q&A section of this of the chat, and we can address those as we get to the end. So over to you guys.
Yeah, so I guess, Cliff, you know, there was some news that I think a lot of people have heard about, but it's nice to hear it directly from the source. And of course, there was a funding announcement that came out, I think, a few days ago. Tell us a little bit about what it is. I think if I have the numbers right, it was a funding that valued the company at 8.8 billion Australian dollars, or 6 billion US. You raised 60 million US, or 88 Australian. Tell us how that came about, because you guys just did a funding not too long ago. then maybe, yeah, so talk about this round and how it came together and why it came together.
Yeah, good question. Well, we approached this when COVID came about, there was a bunch of things we did, right? So we had a sort of 3-stage plan, and the first thing we wanted to do was make sure that our employees were safe and healthy and as protected as possible. So we were one of the first companies in Australia to actually close our office and help stop the spread and reduce the curve. So we were the first ones, and then we did a public plea to all other organizations to actually do the same thing, because we really felt that, like, getting ahead of this virus, that we have it, like, so we have an office in China, we have an office in Wuhan, and we're seeing the implications of what this does to cities and countries. And we're like, we want to be part of stopping the spread rather than proliferating it. And so we called out to all other organizations in Australia to actually do the same thing. And so we wanted to be thought leaders in that area, which started a petition and did start a lot of other companies, especially tech companies, closing their offices and where possible, working remotely. The next stage, we really viewed what was coming in as a storm. And we were like, we don't know what kind of health economic storm is coming at us. So in regards to Canva, we really battened down the hatches. We stopped new hiring. We cut unnecessary expenses, because when the storm's coming, you want to be locked down. You want to be protected, because we were preparing for the worst, like all our revenues dropping. We had no idea what was coming. So we battened down the hatches. However, once we started to sort of understand the storm and realized, hey, with everyone working from home, needing to collaborate more, needing to communicate with their customers more, needing to communicate internally more, our usage was actually going up, and it was going crazy. And so, oh wow, this is interesting. This is probably a good time to take on more money and lean into growth through this period, because it is a period where a lot of the world, such as travel, for example, isn't leaning into growth. So things like media inventory for like advertising is a lot cheaper. So we decided to lean into growth and start hiring again, and really put the pedal to the metal in that regards once we actually started to understand. So the fundraising was a part of that. And part of that growth strategy are things like acquisitions. And having a higher valuation is much better for acquisitions, because you're generally buying these companies with a combination of cash and equity, and you want your company to be worth $6 billion US, not $3.2 billion US, when you're actually buying a company with script. So yeah, there's some of the reasons. Also,
Yeah.
as the company grows, we're 1,000 people now. You need to have a war chest that's comparable to the size of your organization. So you need a bigger sort of cash balance, just to, in case of that doomsday scenario where revenues drop. And some of our revenue lines did drop. Our print revenue line dropped 75% pretty much overnight. That's since recovered, but I mean, that's indicative of what could have happened. And that, unfortunately, that is sustained loss for a lot of businesses, and a lot of businesses are struggling.
You know, I think everybody knows that the company's origins are in Perth. You're in Sydney now, but as a Perth boy, where did you grow up in Perth? There's about 75% of the audience, I think, is local. So where were you from in Perth, and how did that evolve into meeting Melanie and all that sort of stuff?
I grew up in Kingsley, 6026, represent. And then I moved to Scarborough once I moved out of my parents' house. So I grew up in Kingsley with my parents, and then moved to Scarborough. And I talk about this all the time, because rent is so expensive, like pretty much everywhere else in the world. When I moved out, we had a 2-bedroom apartment in this old school apartment on West Coast Highway, beachfront, panoramic beach views, for $330 a week. So it was like $165 each for each of us that had a room, which was just amazing. And it was also our office as well. So very, very good rent prices in Perth. And then I met Mel at Australia Day, at the under the bell tower, pretty much. I think they should change the date of Australia Day, just to put that on the record, because it's really a divisive topic now, rather than just something we can celebrate for all people. And so it'd be good to celebrate that again.
Were you guys were college? Were you college students then, or high school students? I don't know that part of the story.
I was actually doing construction at the time. I
Yeah.
took a year off and was doing construction. And Mel was just finished high school and was starting uni that year. And I was going back to university that year. So, and then we
Wow.
did go to university at the same time. Yeah, UWA.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And so was she already working on Fusion Books at that time, or just kind of
No,
figuring out?
she wasn't. No, we started that together. She got a job. Mel's a perpetual overachiever, so in her university course, she did a design course. She was doing a communications degree at UWA, and in her videography and design course, she overachieved. And they said, "Hey, you're so good at this. Why don't you teach design?" So she started teaching design, and that was when she realized, "Hey, design is really tough. I think this can be way simpler. It should be collaborative. It should be online. It should be seamless. It should integrate all these difficult things like going to a stock photography library, deep etching images. All of this should be in one page." So that's where the idea came from. So Mel had the big vision for Canva from the very, very beginning. However, our ambitions outstripped our sort of means. So we're like, well, we have no money. We knew no investors. We didn't know you at the time, Bill. So we're like, how do we turn this idea and actually create a business that can be profitable? And I was doing a teaching degree, and I was doing a prac, so I was working in a school, and I was like, why don't we do it for yearbooks? Because I see these teachers struggling. They've got no graphic design experience. They need to create this 100-page book. And we're like, okay, cool, let's do that. And so we went through getting the software developed. We got a small loan to do that, and then put one foot in front of the other.
How old were you at the time you did that?
I was like 21. Mel was 19, I think.
Wow. Unbelievable.
But I think that's what the thing with business, there's no aha moment. It's putting one foot in front of the other. Another saying I like is like falling forward. You just got to keep on going. It's not like, oh, I have this genius idea and then I build this product and I launch this product and it blows up. That never happens. It's like a lot of hard work behind anything. And every step of the way, hiring your first engineer, figuring out the product, talking to customers, definitely getting your first customer, getting investment. Every single one of these things is a really, really difficult thing. And you just got to keep pushing forward. And I think what differentiates a good entrepreneur from a bad entrepreneur is the grit and their ability to just grind through the difficult things and persevere. And I think if you can keep persevering, you learn lots through that process, and then good things eventually happen, but it's not easy. If you think it's going to be easy, you're in the wrong fucking role.
Yeah. Yes. So back in the Fusion Books days, how did you and Mel divide your roles and responsibilities?
Well, I was shit. I couldn't even use computers. I hated computers. And so Mel used to call, because I used to like Mel this at the stage. She's doing all the product, and I just felt useless because. What do you think of this? I'm like, oh yeah, it's good. Because I had no design background. But where I came into my own was when it came to getting customers. I was like, all right, we've got the product now. And I felt really useless for that period because I had no product development experience. So I was just like, yeah. But when it came to like having a product, I'm like, I can go get customers. So I found a list of every single school in Australia, and I called them all, every single one of them that had over 300 students. So I set myself a target of 100 calls a day. And we sent out these leaflets, and I just called all day. And I had this like cunning little plan, because I figured out that the admins in schools, the secretaries at the things that answer the phone, they're really protective of their staff, and they probably get sales calls all the time. So I had this plan, and I believed in it myself, because I was like, believed the lie I was telling. I was like, oh, hey, and I'd act really entitled. I'd say, oh, hey, I've got this book here. I've got to send it out to the yearbook coordinator, but it's got no name in it. It looks like a pretty nice book. And they're like, oh, just send it to me. I'm like, no, I'm not sending it. I don't care if I send it or not. It says yearbook coordinator. I need a name. And they're like, oh, let me check. And they check, and I'd get the name of the yearbook coordinator, because this book cost us $5 to send out. And that's $5, like, it was a lot at the time. So I'd have to get this name, then I'd send them the book, and then I'd call them a week later once they received that book to talk through. It was the sample book and said what we did. And so I just did sales. And I think sales is a critical part of growing any business. It's like sales is pitching your team, sales is getting investment, sales is getting customers, sales is everything. So you need to pair the product vision with a good, healthy dose of being able to sell shit.
So you've already talked about some of the things that you did then, but if you look back at that Fusion Books period, are there a couple of key lessons that you learned during that Fusion Books thing? You said, I am never going to do this again. If I do it again, I'm going to do it this way. What were the key things you learned in that period?
Probably one of the key things we learned was the value of good software development. We had a great software development firm that built our first Fusion Books platform in PHP. This is way before like JavaScript and WYSIWYG stuff. And they did a really solid job. And I kind of got onto Odesk at the time and started thinking of how we could cut costs because they're expensive. They were based in Perth. And then we outsourced all our software development to be built in Flash, which was a cool technology at the time, to India. And this team, and we had no software development background, so we couldn't really interview these teams. There's many, many good teams and great software that's developed in India, but we didn't have that team. We did it to cut costs, and we really got what we paid for, which was a system that looked okay on the front end, but couldn't actually export a PDF for print in the back end. So what would happen is the customers, the schools, would create their design thinking they've done a yearbook, and we couldn't actually export a PDF that needed to go for print. So we actually had to look at what they created on the screen in their Flash front end and then recreate all those books in InDesign by site. So we had to hire an army.
Wow.
So the key learning was really invest in good technologists, because if everyone wants to Google, it's like two soccer players versus 100 kids, right? And there's two Japanese soccer players dominating 100 kids. And that's kind of like, you get what you pay for, and two good software engineers can outperform 1,000 shit ones. So yeah, that was the big takeaway.
Yeah, and the focus that the company had on hiring those first two. I remember that. That was a beautiful period, beautifully executed with the Facebook pictures for, I forgot what was his name. This your second.
Dave Herndon, our CTO, still our CTO.
Yeah, just amazing, just amazing. Yeah, so Canva now has 1,000 people. What you may not remember exactly, like year by year, what the headcount was like a year ago and a year before that, but you guys have been growing at probably 100% a year or more in headcount.
Yeah, it's about 100%.
Yeah. So how do you? So this is a very tricky thing, but how do you describe Canva's culture? How do you onboard people and maintain that culture? And also, where are all the people located? Because you're not all in one place. So how do you maintain consistent culture across multiple geographies at that rate of growth, onboarding as many people that are new as exist in the company every year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And at the start, we were able to do it by brute force and leading by example and being present in like our offices. Like at the time we had, like early on, we had Sydney, and then we had Sydney and Manila. Now we've got Sydney, Manila, Beijing, Wuhan, Austin, and we're just setting up something in the Bay Area. And we used to just like lead by example. Our company's culture is who you hire, who you fire, and who you promote. And it was our leaders that we used to respect and value. They set the sort of bar. And that was fine for a while, but I think that has its limits.
So what size of company, at what size of company did you start to hit that, this is, we got to do something more formal?
We probably stretched it to its limits, and we probably did that until about 300 people, 400 people, 350. Yeah. And that was really pushing its limits. And then people were like, we need a bit more structure. Now at our scale, the only thing that can guide an organization at our scale is values. And we really talk a lot about our values. Be a force for good, make complex things simple, be a good human is one of our most critical values. And people really hold each other to account on these values now. And we don't have to be there in those meetings saying, that's not being a good human, or that's not doing the right thing, or we want what's best for our customers. We want to make complex things simple. People talk about these values all the time now, and that's kind of essentially us overlaying our presence and what we want to drive the company when we don't have to be there. And I think that's the only way to really sort of organize a company at scale. And then you've got to hire good people and trust their judgment working within those values, because your people are your company.
And the locations now, because of course you started in Perth. And talk a little bit about the move. How long did you stay in Perth? I know it wasn't super long, but how long did you stay in Perth? You moved to Sydney. I'm sure you thought at the time about moving to the Bay Area, San Francisco at that time too. How did you make that choice? And
yeah,
when did it happen, and how and why?
So we moved with probably the catalyst was Fusion Books. We had the majority of our customers on the East Coast. By sheer volume of population, the majority of Australia lives on the East Coast, and I hated getting up so early to answer calls every day because Sydney's 3 hours ahead in summertime with daylight savings. So I was up at like 5 a.m. pretty much most mornings, which sucked. So that was a little bit of a drive. And just being close to our customers, being able to go out and do demos. We had to go out and actually talk to these schools at the time. And it was probably the combination of that with the availability of technology talent. I would have loved to have stayed in Perth, but the realities of Perth are there is no Google, there is no Atlassian, there are no really, really large centers of technology excellence. There's a lot of great technologists there, but they're kind of hidden away and it's not as easy of a talent pool to recruit from. So we needed to hire Google level engineers, and Sydney had Google and Atlassian. So it was kind of like those factors all kind of got us to come across. I'm very glad we didn't go to the Bay Area. Bay Area's got lots of benefits, but I think for an early stage company, you don't need to be there. We're global technology companies. You don't need to be there. I mean, there are some disadvantages. It's harder to get investment and all that kind of stuff, and you do need to go over there a lot in the early days. But Australia is far cheaper to run a technology company. We get the R&D tax concession. There's other concessions like the Commercialisation Australia grant. Also, if you're a global company, I would definitely, as a technology company, I would not choose Australia as your first market. I would choose the US as your first market if you can, because if you can crack it in the US and make USD, that, I don't know what the exchange rate is today, it's probably like $1 USD buys $1.40, you're getting a 40% uplift on the money you make, and then you spend that in Australia. So that 100 grand salary becomes a lot cheaper if you're making money in USD. So it's currency benefits there. So yeah, I think I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Yes. So and looking back to when the company started, after you got a little bit of fundraising critical mass, what were the moments were there any moments that you thought, oh my God, we're dead? And then also, what were the moments where you started to think, I think we're actually going to make it? And kind of the key wins or key things that happened where you're like, yes, this is the right thing to do.
So there was one key moment where we almost gave up, and we were staying at Chris Moore's house, right? When anyone's raising money, I assume they go through the same process. They have a Google sheet with all their leads in it, like all the opportunities of the investors that you're reaching out to, that money. You're essentially building your funnel. I mean, you're not using Salesforce, you're just doing it hackily in a Google sheet. And it got to the point where we'd reached out to them all, we got back, and so we whittled it down, and then we had like 3 really interested people, and then like one of them dropped out, we had 2 really interested people, and we just saw that list of opportunities turn from green to red. And you're often throwing people in the top of the funnel, and you're at different stages, so there's always a bit of hope. We got to the point where we'd been rejected by everyone, like everyone. And we'd been at it for months. We'd been at it for 3 months. And we're at the stage where we're like, fuck, we have to start again. And we'd like, and starting again's tough because you'd leveraged all your intros, you'd burnt all the investors that you had the best chance with. Word was getting around that like, and the Valley is a very sort of incestuous place where if you're not hot, you're not hot. And everyone talks and like, nah, These guys, don't invest in them. And so we had to start again. And that was like, we had this walk in this sort of parkland near Chris's house, bushland more than a parkland. And it was just like, it was a sad walk. We was like, shit, what are we going to do? Are we just going to go home, or are we going to like give this another crack? And like, we were sad for that day. And then I think we woke up in the next day or two and we're like, all right, let's start again.
Was Cameron part of the team at that point yet?
Nah. So, we needed a technical co-founder. Like, that was one of the big reasons why no one would invest in us. We were just two kids from Perth with no technical background. We hadn't worked at Google. We did have Lars on as an advisor, and he introduced us to Cam, and Cam became our technical co-founder, and he was a real unlocking factor, because then we could say, hey, look, we got a technical co-founder. He worked at Google. He worked on Google Wave.
That's what I was saying from day one. It was like, get the technologist, and then it's time. Yeah.
So he was like the Rosetta Stone. And once we got him, it gave investors a lot more confidence that we'd be able to actually achieve our big vision.
Great.
Which is understandable. It's a fair criticism.
And then, it's just about at time, Bill. And there has been heaps of questions coming through, but you've done an amazing job of weaving those questions into the conversation already. I know that you both have to go on and do other things, so we're probably going to have to wrap it up.
I've just pinged saying I can do 5 more minutes, and I've pushed my next meeting 5 minutes. So if there's
there you go. Okay, fantastic. So we've got time for a couple more questions. Bill, if you had another one.
Yeah, I had one last question, which was, you guys, obviously Canva now has quite a great ethos for helping people, helping the world. And I'd love to just ask you, where does that come from, and where are you going to take that? And how are you guys going to execute on that? Because you already are, but how do you, what have you done already? Because you have done some things, and what do you see happening with your, kind of ethos for doing well by doing good?
Yeah. That's a very deep question to answer well. So tactically, we're doing a bunch of things. Like we've committed to the 1% pledge, which means we donate 1% of company equity, which is at $6 billion US is a lot, 60 million currently, and that grows, and we invest that. So, and we invest in that primarily into education, because we feel educating the underprivileged really breaks the cycle and can get people out of the cycle of poverty, and really opens up opportunities. And with the internet now, if you can get access to good education through the internet and through hardware devices and put them in the hands of sort of underprivileged folk, that kind of is a way that you can help break the cycle. We also empower nonprofits through our product, and have a deep sort of focus on that. But philosophically, like for us, it's like, how much fancy, and I know you're the same, Bill, it's like, how much fancy shit do you need? Like, you only can eat one steak dinner a night, you can only sleep in one bed a night. Why hoard things? So all I really value is having enough money to have experiences, to go kite surfing in that lovely spot, and that actually doesn't take up much money. So Mel and I have committed to giving away all our money. Like, the last thing I want to do is have kids and raise them to be rich little wankers, which I see around often. So we're going to give away all our money. We're going to keep like enough to go on trips and stuff, and try and make the world a better place. Like, you look at politics right now, and it's kind of sad, and you think about, like, who are the people that have the biggest levers affecting the world? And that's like politicians. And then you look at the state of global politics at the moment, and it's quite saddening, because, I mean, in Australia, I think, for all its pros and cons, we're doing pretty damn good. Like, you can criticize our government, but at least we're not fucking crazy. So I don't know. I'm not saying I'm going to do something with politics, but like, that's just the way I'm thinking. Like, how can you have the biggest positive impact on the world? And I think anyone that has large sums of wealth, or has built a company that has is valued a lot, has an obligation to like give back to the world and do good, rather than just sort of hoard things and buy big boats and, I don't know, like,
who needs it? That's great, Cliff. I love that. I just, because you do know me well, and I think I've always had that ethos. It's wonderful to see companies like Canva have that built into their fabric. And I do have
saying, bring Pumbaa out, please. That's my dog.
Yay. Yeah, and I do have some great projects to share with you. I'm working on one with UNICEF that I think you guys, it fits what you're describing. could be game changing, literally game changing for a couple billion people. It'll take a while, but it's sponsored by the UN. Yes.
The big things are always hard and take a while. Like if anything's easy, it's generally like someone else has done it. So it's the big challenges that we're keen on taking on. So
great.
Well, it was a pleasure.
So, Rowan, do you want to take over on a couple last ones?
Well, I think there has a lot of questions. You've probably answered a lot of them. One, there's been a few about the financing strategy, Cliff, and you covered that somewhat, saying that you're looking at the next phase of acquisitions and you want to bulk out the valuation.
Yeah, with finance, I'll jump in there. With financing strategy, as a startup founder, you've got one job: don't run out of money. And it's easier said than done, because not running out of money means you need to have leverage to go raise that money or make money from your customers. So yeah, it's probably a longer conversation, but like that's the fundraising strategy for all companies.
Where to from here though with the finance strategy? Are you guys looking at listing at some point? Is it keeping it private? What's the thought on the horizons?
At the moment, we can move way faster as a private company. And you've got to ask yourself, why go public? There's 3 reasons. There's to get capital into the company. There is to allow for liquidity for early investors, employees, and founders and whatnot. We can do that regardless. We do employee liquidity rounds, so that's not a reason. The other one is like marketing and really sort of like elevating your brand, particularly if you're focusing on enterprise sales and selling into large enterprises. We are focused on that, but that's not like enough of a reason right now for us to list. So I would see us at least being private for the next couple of years and continuing to move as fast as we can.
No pressure at all from the investors, at least for me. Yeah,
none of our early investors want to sell.
Yeah. Yes.
Good to have a faithful investor group. So I think we'll probably wrap it up there. I know you've got a busy week, and thanks very much for both of you for taking the time to join us this morning. This is just a taste of this conversation. I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer, and maybe we'll get you back later in the year for West Tech Fest to talk more about how things have gone over the rest of the year. So appreciate the time you've taken. Everyone on the call, thanks for taking the time this morning, and stay tuned for more webinars from West Tech Fest. Paula will be sending out information. If you've got particular content you want to hear, then please get in touch with us and we'll see what we can do. We've got one coming up in a month. We're going to try and run a webinar every month. One to be hosted next will be with Amanda Price from KPMG. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.